Hi everyone, welcome back to the 86 F's to Give podcast. I'm your host Al, and today we are talking about people pleasing and how we are going to work on not doing that anymore. But before I get into all that, I wanted to welcome you to episode 15. We are cruising through these freaking episodes, you guys. I also am just feeling so reflective and grateful after doing my birthday episode last week. I was a little worried that it wasn't going to be relatable because I was just talking about myself the whole time. But I realized the whole point of this podcast is to not care what people think. And I'm so proud of myself for doing that episode. And I'm so excited to look back on it for years to come. So yeah, I don't care if no one listened to it or no one liked it. I am just really proud of myself for documenting that and putting that out into the universe so that I can continue to attract, positive things and the goals that I'm trying to achieve. So yes, feeling very grateful and reflective on that. And then during last week's episode, I kind of hinted at potentially doing this week's episode about people pleasing. And I mean, that has probably been the most requested episode. Whenever I do a little question box on Instagram, that is what people say that they struggle with the most and that they're trying to 86 out of their lives. So I figured it was time. I've been kind of nervous to do this episode because so many people have asked for it and also experience, people pleasing tendencies. And it's definitely something that as humans, we just want to please other humans. And I don't think it's a bad thing. But when it is at the expense of our own needs and wants and desires and goals and things like that is where the line is getting crossed. So we're going to talk a little bit about a healthy balance of people pleasing today and kind of why it's important to me, how it manifests in my life. And then I also, did some research of just kind of how it manifests in most people. And I'll kind of give some tips and tricks as to how I kind of work on not feeling the need to people please. And like I say in most of these episodes, this is definitely one of the ones that is a huge work in progress. I have been aware of this, that I'm a people pleaser for a very long time, and it is still something that I'm actively working to not do on the daily. So if you are a chronic people pleaser and you think that there's no hope, there is hope. It's just a lot of unlearning and relearning that we have to do. And hopefully this conversation can kind of get us started in the right direction. So without further ado, today we are 86ing our people-pleasing tendencies. We are at least starting. We are getting our foot in the door of canceling out our people-pleasing needs, desires, tendencies, all of the above. Because most of the time we're serving others, but if we're serving others at the expense or if it's causing a toxic relationship with ourselves, then at the end of the day, we're going to end up not being able to serve others at all because we're so drained from giving. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But of course, this topic is, close to home for me because I mentioned I am an active people pleaser and I'm trying to get better at it, but it's definitely something that has just kind of been ingrained in my brain. And I would say is probably the main root of the anxiety that I feel when I feel like I'm going to let people down. That is where my anxiety really stems from, or, doing something outside of my comfort zone. But really when I feel like I'm going to be not able to do something that somebody needs me to do or is asking me to do, or, that is really where my anxiety stems from. So not only am I trying to help with the people pleasing, I'm also trying to combat some of my anxiety with this as well. So it's definitely something that I'm passionate about talking about. As a people pleaser, I know how debilitating the feeling of wanting to do something to help someone, but also physically not being able to say no because that if you do that, you're going to be late to work, or you're going to actually be really uncomfortable the whole time, or you're just saying yes so that you're avoiding conflict and you really don't want to do this thing, whatever it may be. So I know that feeling of physically not being able to say no or physically not being able to stand up for yourself. And I'll kind of talk about the range of different areas in my life and people's lives where this can kind of be present, because, it can go from anywhere of being at the nail salon and being too scared to say, hey, that's not the color I wanted. Or literally the last time I got my nails done, she asked me if I wanted my nails trimmed, and I cut, and I was no, but if you need to cut, my one nail was a little shorter than the rest. And I was like, well, if you need to cut the other ones, like make it even. She literally like cut them down to nubs. Like, and like I literally said nothing. I said, oh, okay, sounds good. And like at that point, there's really nothing I can do. Like the nails are gone and they'll grow back. It's fine. But I was just so excited because I had grown my nails out so nice and long. But whatever, it's fine. But like that is just like a silly example to like people like at work, your boss may be asking you to do another task and you actually are like so swamped that you like obviously want to take on the task because you don't want to look like you aren't able to complete what's being asked of you, but like you know that you're not going to be able to adequately complete all these tasks or do them all to your fullest extent. And so yeah, there's a wide range of people pleasing, right? Like just trying to avoid conflict, but then also like your job could be on the line, you know? Like that's how it feels in our heads at least. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more, but first I wanted to just define people pleasing. If you are somebody that does not experience the need to people please, I envy you, and I hope this episode is not relatable to you at all, because that is where we're all trying to get. Okay. But people pleasing or a people pleaser is somebody that has a deep desire to please others, even at the expense of their own needs, wants, sanity, time, whatever it may be. Like it's causing a detriment to your life to please these people. And like I said in the beginning, like there's a healthy way to please others. Like I am such a helper. Like I want to help people. I want to bring joy to others. Like that I would not define as people pleasing in the negative way. But when there is the line gets crossed of, you know, I'm pleasing people at the expense of my own wants and my own comfortability, like that is when it gets toxic, and that is where we don't want to cross over that line, right? And so some tendencies for people pleasers is difficulty saying no, right? It's like I said earlier, like it's almost physically impossible to get the word no out of your mouth. Like, and that is something I experience very often where I'm just like, I cannot even type the word no sometimes. Taking on too much. So like I said, at work, maybe like somebody's asking you to do this, another person's asking you to do this, and you just keep saying yes, 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 when really in reality, you know that you're physically not going to be able to do all those things, or you stay up all night to get them done. Like that is another example of something that you're costing your sleep and your time because you just didn't stand up for yourself. Avoiding conflict, of course, apologizing for things that are not your fault or like things that don't warrant an apology. I am guilty. Okay. That TikTok sound, like guilty. I am so guilty of saying sorry when like I literally had nothing to do with something and like somebody is sad or like, you know, they're just expressing something to me that like frustrated them. Like, I'm so sorry. Like literally, girl, it had nothing to do with you. Calm down. A lot of times people pleasers will like change their personality depending on who they're around. And that's another thing that you're costing yourself, is like being your authentic self. And we do not do that here in the 86 Steps to Give podcast community. Okay. We are true authentic selves. We do not change our personalities for anyone. Okay. And so another example or tendency of people pleasers is to have low self-esteem, a lack of like self-identity, because you are so like unable to really prioritize or realize what you value, because you just always like say yes to others and what they value, and you really don't know like your true self and kind of what is important to you. And then that fear of rejection, of course, and also difficulty setting boundaries. That's another one that I would say really is hard for me. So that kind of leads me into how people pleasing manifests itself in my life. So I already kind of touched on some of them, but I feel like the number one, or like the most common like casual way that it presents itself in my life is it will cost me to be late to something. And like somebody will ask me something that I'm like already rushing, or I'm already like running out the door to do something, and then I'm like unable to like say no, or like just like giving someone a ride that's like a little bit out of the way, but like then I'm gonna be late to work, or I'm gonna be late to whatever I need to go to. Like, oh well, I'm just gonna be late, I guess. Like I do that so often. Also overcommitting to tasks. I think I definitely will take on anything that anyone asks me to do, whether I have time to do it or not, and I will just find a time, find a way, whether that's at 11 p.m., 6 a.m., whatever it is. Like I just kind of figure it out. And again, that's costing me my sleep, my rest, to be able to be my fullest self at work. Saying yes when I mean no. Okay, we talked about this a little bit already. This is definitely a big one for me. That can be with literally anything, like taking on more at work, when somebody asks you for a favor, when somebody asks you to like go somewhere with them or do something with them that you're like actually uncomfortable doing, but you're like too scared to say no, that like, or like you're embarrassed to say you're uncomfortable. Like I especially in like high school and stuff or middle school, like I remember to like avoid conflict, I would text my mom, hey, I'm gonna call you and ask you to do something with whoever, can you please say no? So that my mom would be the bad guy in the situation and I didn't have to be like the one saying like, no, I'm too scared to go to this place, or I don't want to go to this place, or I'm uncomfortable. And I would call her and she would be like, oh no, Al, sorry, like I just cooked dinner, you have to come home, or we're having family dinner, whatever the excuse may be. And I'd be like, oh, sorry guys, Yolanda said no, can't come out. And like, honestly, I will be that way as a mom too. Like my kids will know that they can text me to say no and I will always say no. Like that was such a huge savior to me as a like little nervous, anxious middle schooler and high schooler. And so definitely that is something I still struggle with. And obviously now I'm able to say like, no, I'm not going out. But like different areas of my life, it still presents itself for sure. So that is definitely something I'm still working on. Another thing that kind of goes with the like being late thing is just like if somebody asks me to do something and I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Like just behind the scenes, like fully changing my entire plan for my day because now I said yes to doing something when I like had my full day planned. And I should know better that like I do not do well when I expect a day or an event or something to go a certain way and then it just gets like flipped upside down. Like that is not something I want to purposely put myself through. Like I understand things happen and things come up and I'm working on being able to just adapt to those things and like that is fine. But like I shouldn't purposely put myself in a situation to be like all thrown off and all uncomfortable and like changing every little thing around. And like granted, there are times where like if something comes up for somebody and they last minute really need a favor or they really need a ride to the airport, like I'm going to do my best to figure out a way to make it work. But if it is going to be at the expense of me being late to work or me not being able to do something that I really want to do or whatever it is, like it's okay to say no and not rearrange your whole freaking day. Like, okay. Another thing, I said this already, but I say sorry about 1,000 times a day and I just don't, no one has that much to apologize for. And so that is definitely something I'm working on as well. And then again, the example of the nail salon, like not standing up for myself in public is another way that this really manifests in my life. Or, you know, like not asking for help or where something is at the grocery store or whatever, like just being afraid to ask questions. And I've talked about this on here before, but like my parents used to like force me to ask where things were in the grocery store, even though they knew where they were, because I was so bad with this as a kid. And obviously I can like ask for help now as a 26-year-old, but like there's still other areas where I'm like, I am not asking my coworker how to do something that I should know how to do. I'm just gonna sit here until I can figure it out. And like other times I'm not afraid to ask, but there's just like, you know, when you get in those moods where you're like too scared to inconvenience someone else that you just like sit there and struggle, like that is just like not beneficial to literally anyone, because you're wasting your time, you're wasting your company's time, because you could be being more productive. A little tongue twister there, geez. But yeah, and then the last couple ways that this manifests in my life is, one, answering my phone the second somebody texts me. And this, like, not if they're just like saying something, but if they like are asking something of me or they need a favor or they're asking a question, like I am like immediately texting back. And I'm like, unless this question is life or death, with which if it is, they should be calling me or 911, actually, not me. But like, unless this question needs to be answered actually like immediately, then we take your time, girl. Like you're allowed to go do the things that you're doing and circle back to answer whatever you need to answer, you know, whenever you get to it. Like do not drop everything to respond to a text or a call. And then the last way that it manifests in my life is the boundaries thing. Like this is something I've like recently tried to really work on, is like, especially with things that I'm just like not comfortable talking about with certain people, or, you know, just like not letting people have access to me that no longer need to be in my life, or just like, yeah, like not answering questions I don't want to answer, and not, you know, I feel like that is really like, I get so nervous and like tongue twisted when people, you know, ask me a question about like, oh, like how much money do you make? Or like the weird, awkward questions. Like I just like don't want to talk about it. I don't know. So like I need to come up with better phrases to have prepared when people ask me questions that I'm just not comfortable talking about with like certain people, so that I'm like not just like, oh, I don't have anything to say, like I'm just gonna tell them the truth, like, and I'm not saying lie, but like you're allowed to say like, oh, I'm actually not comfortable talking about that. Like that is an okay response, and I need to like drill that into my head. Okay, so now I wanted to talk about a few tips, things we can work on to kind of cancel out our people-pleasing tendencies, you know, kind of not feel like we need to say yes when we want to say no, or not feel like, you know, we need to just drop everything we're doing to help someone when it actually makes our lives more difficult, right? Okay, my first piece of advice when we are trying to not be such a people pleaser is, and this is something I'm working on in all areas of my life, is to just slow down. So when someone asks something of you, take a second and ask yourself, is this something I'm able to take on? Let me look at my calendar. Let me look at my to-do list for work. Let me evaluate how I'm feeling. Let me think about if this is something I'm going to be comfortable doing. Because if you just immediately say yes, like, oh my God, of course I can do that. And then you like take a second and you're like, oh wait, actually I already like now I'm double booked, or I actually don't have enough time in today to do that because my to-do list is already full. Like whatever it is, actually I don't want to do that. Then you either have to like rearrange your whole life, and that is really inconvenient to you, or you have to go back to that person and then be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I actually can't do that, or I don't want to do that, or I'm unable to do that because of this, and this. And I actually like didn't think of all that when you first asked me. And then that conversation is more awkward and kind of anxiety inducing than if you had just said no in the first place. And trust me, I know from experience. So that is my piece of advice to first do, is to just take a second, take a minute. If it's a text, take as long as you need. You do not need to immediately respond. If somebody's asking you in person to do something, just take a second, be like, let me get right back to you on that. I just need to think about, like, let me look at my calendar and just see if I'm able to actually make that work. And whether you are or not, if it's something you don't want to do, blame it on the calendar, blame it on your friend, blame it on your roommate, blame it on your dog, blame it on your parents, like whatever it is. Like, you know, if you're not able to just be like, I'm actually really uncomfortable doing that, find someone that you can blame it on. I will always say, oh, I'm going to my parents' house. I think maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but like I just blame it on my parents. Oh, sorry, they asked me to come over and help them fix the TV. You know, parents, you know, have something that you can just kind of fall back on. And then also I would say practice saying no. And I don't mean like, you know, just start saying no to things randomly to practice, but like, you know, come up with phrases in your head that maybe feel less harsh when you actually do want to say no, that you can be prepared to say, right? So like if somebody asks, you know, to help them move or to drive them to the airport, be like, I really wish I could help you, but I'm already busy on that day. Or like, I just am like so booked and so like jam-packed schedule busy. Like I cannot help you. I really wish I could. Like just be ready to say that. You know, at work, if your boss asks you to do another task, like I think we've talked about this before on here, but just like if they ask you something that you're unable to take on because you just have so much on your plate already, like either ask them like, hey, I have a lot on my to-do list already. Like, what would you like me to prioritize? Or just say, you know, I mean, honestly, that's probably the best way to go is like, or I'm actually not able to take that on right now. Like, is somebody else able to do it? If not, I can do it tomorrow, or I can bump something else on my list. You just let me know what you'd like me to bump since you already asked me to do this, and this. Okay. Yeah. Just having like preset phrases and responses to things is so helpful. And you can use this in literally anything in life, but just like, especially with people pleasing, like have those like go-to phrases, those go-to, I wouldn't say excuses, but just like reasons why you can't do something, so that you're not like thrown for a loop when somebody asks you to do something that you're just like really uncomfortable doing, or you just can't do, like, you know, and then you get stuck and just say yes, you know? And then another really key piece to this, I think, is to sit down and talk to someone or journal, or at least just think about what is important to you. Like, what are your core values? What is something that you prioritize? So that you can actually make an informed decision when somebody asks you to do something. Because if they ask you something that you're not even comfortable with or doesn't align with the things that you value, it's a really easy no once you are able to identify that actually this doesn't align with me at all. So I'm not going to go to this place, or I'm not going to do that. Or, you know, maybe your core value is putting yourself first and, you know, saying, oh, actually, I have this self-care day planned out, and like that is a good enough excuse to not do something. And people are going, oh, you're just going to be at home like laying on the couch. Yep, that's my day. Like that is still a good enough excuse, because you value putting yourself first and recharging yourself so that you can be of service to others when you're able to. And so really like jotting down, thinking about doing research on core values and what's important to you so you can really understand what you value and what you prioritize, so that when people ask you things, it's like really, it's almost an immediate no when those bells go off, like, oh, that actually does not align with me at all. Like, thank you for the offer, but no. And then reflect on times that you have said no and like what that person said back to you, or like reflect on times where you have like stood up for yourself in public. Like, you know, I think, you know, people get anxious to like say that their food at a restaurant like didn't come out exactly how it was supposed to. Like, think of a time where like you've seen someone say, oh, actually I ordered this, or this was not this sauce was supposed to be on the side and like I really don't like spicy things, like whatever. Like 9 times out of 10 the server is like, oh my gosh, you're so right, like you did ask me that, let me go get you a new one. Like, they're so nice about it. And if they're not nice, then like they're going through something, like they're probably having a really bad day, and that's them, that's the they thing. You don't need to take it personally, although I understand that it is hard not to. And just like reflect on a time that you did stand up for yourself, or you did say no, and think about how it went. Like, it probably was fine, you know? And so when you have that come up again, just be like, oh, you know what, the last time I stood up for myself at the nail salon, they actually weren't really that rude. Or maybe they, you know, whatever, maybe they, you know, at the restaurant, they did bring me new food and they were really nice about it and they were overly apologetic, like whatever it may be. Think about the times where it went well and, you know, channel that energy and use those same tools. And then also just prepare yourself that people might be disappointed or be upset. And it's not at you specifically. It's just that like everyone has an expectation or a thought about how something is going to go. And when it doesn't go that way, people get upset. I was just talking about this in the beginning of the episode. Like, I struggle with that really bad when I like expect my parents to do something a certain way, or somebody to say this a certain, like anything, or I expect a day or an event to go a certain way, and one little thing doesn't, it really throws me for a loop. Okay. And so reminding yourself like, okay, this person asked me to do something and I'm really unable, like not able to do it. I really don't want to do it. I'm really uncomfortable doing it, whatever the answer is. When I tell them this, they might be disappointed, and like just because they're expecting something to go a certain way and it's not going to go that way, or they're disappointed that you're not able to help them with something. Like, it's not at you specifically, it's just overall disappointment. And to be able to differentiate like where that disappointment is being placed, even if they like say to you like, oh, I'm really disappointed in you, like, no, it's not about you. You're allowed to put yourself first. They are going through whatever they're going through to feel the need to place that disappointment on you, and really they're just disappointed that it's not going how they expected it to. And then my last piece of advice would be to just protect your peace. And this goes back to all the tips I talked about, like, you know, slowing down protects your peace, knowing what to say, like having a prepared response protects your peace, being prepared for people to be disappointed or be upset protects your peace, reflecting on your core values and what's important to you protects your peace. All of those things are so important, so that when you have an experience or a situation where you're kind of like, oh gosh, I don't know what to say, like I really don't want to do this, you are prepared, and your peace is the number one thing that you should be protecting, not anyone else's. Yeah, that kind of leads me into some affirmations / quotes that I came up with or researched to kind of go along with this whole topic of people pleasing and to help us not be such people pleasers. The first one is, I am allowed to say no, right? We are allowed to say no. Saying no is not a bad thing. Saying no is a good thing, actually. Probably saving lives. Another one is, it's my life, so I'm going to put me first, right? We are the only people that we have to spend every second of the day with, of our lives with. So let's make us enjoyable people to be around. Let's put ourselves first. Let's protect ourselves first, right? And like make ourselves happy. It's like a no-brainer, although it is so freaking hard and I struggle with it too. I prioritize blank in my life. Fill in with a core value or something that a boundary or something that you really prioritize, and like say that over and over again. Especially if it's something that you're trying to work on prioritizing, like, you know, I prioritize my exercise. And if people are impeding on the time that you set out to work out or go on a walk or whatever, you know, actually I really prioritize moving my body. And so I'm not going to be able to help you with this because this is the 1 hour I have today to go on a run, whatever it may be, you know? And so it kind of fuels your decision making because you know your values and your boundaries. My peace is my priority. That is such a good one, okay? This is a quote I hear all the time, and I really, really love it about boundaries. The only people who get upset about me having boundaries are those who benefit from me not having any. The only people that get upset about me having boundaries are those who benefit from me not having any. Does that make sense? Like, the people that are going to be like, oh, come on, and try to push your boundaries and not respect them are people that were benefiting by you not having that boundary. They were getting what they wanted out of you. And then you decided to put the boundary up and now they no longer get that. So now they're upset at you. No, go find it elsewhere. Do it for yourself. Like, this is my boundary and I'm going to need you to respect it or hit the pipe, right? And then another one is, it is not my responsibility, nor is it possible for me to be there for everyone all of the time. I think this is a really good one and relatable for me as well, because like, I want to be a good friend. I want people to see me as a good friend. I want people to see me as a good person. I want to be a good person. I feel like anytime someone needs me, I need to like drop everything and be there for them. But a lot of times, like if my friend is really sad and they need someone to listen to them, but I'm also really sad, it's probably not going to be really beneficial for either of us to dump on the other one, right? So like, recognizing like, hey, I am so sorry. I really want to be here for you right now, but I am not in a space to take on, like to listen or even like absorb what you're feeling right now, because I'm such an empath and I know that I will physically feel how you feel and I'm already down bad. Like I'm going to need to put a pin in this and like maybe chat tomorrow about it. And I think like that is so hard because you want to be there for your friends and they want to be there for you. But it's like, if they're not in a good place for you to dump on them, that's also just as toxic, because like now you're not getting out of it what you need, they're not getting out of it what they need, and it's not beneficial. So that is a really hard one. I think it's okay to not be able to be there for everyone all the time. Although as hard as it sounds, it is okay. And so those are my affirmations and my quotes that I came up with for people pleasing and working on not people pleasing. And some of my final thoughts are, I was listening to Brooke and Connor make a podcast. It's Brooke Averick and Connor Wood. They're like TikTokers, podcasters, and influencers. And they were talking about how they always talk about how like their plane anxiety, like about all of it, but especially if they're in the like middle or window seat, asking the people to like get up for them to go to the bathroom because they don't want to cause confrontation or like inconvenience anyone. And they randomly were talking about it in an episode, and they like both were talking about how they had recently asked people to get up for them to go to the bathroom, and that the people were so nice and were like, of course, like let me get up for you, like no problem, like because everyone has to go to the bathroom, we're humans, like. And Connor literally goes, it's my life, I'm gonna put me first. And it almost felt like a breakthrough moment for him, because like they both are like anxious people and I relate to them as an anxious individual. And it was just like honestly a breakthrough for me too, like him yelling that. I was like, you're right, Connor, it is our lives, like we should put ourselves first. And it was just, it honestly inspired talking about this week, because I was like, yeah, like we don't need to worry about people pleasing all of the dang time, because majority of the time people are going to be okay when we don't people please, you know? Like imagine if you just sat on the flight and like you would be so uncomfortable and like in pain, and then you have to run to the bathroom and like causing a whole scene, and like when you could have just said, hey, I'm so sorry, can I please go to the bathroom? I'll be back in 2 seconds. Like, everyone's fine. Yeah, absolutely, go to the bathroom. Like, people are prepared when they are in the middle or the aisle seat that people might ask them to get up. That is an expectation on a flight, especially if it's longer than like 2 hours. And so, yeah, I just thought that was interesting and relatable, because like it is our lives, put us first. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we are the only people that we have to spend every second of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year with, and we should do the best that we can to make ourselves the most enjoyable person to be around for ourselves, not for anybody else, but for ourselves, and make us the best versions of ourselves so that we feel good in our skin and we can be our authentic selves, because that will only radiate towards others. I think I hinted at this a little bit before, but I'm going to quote my mom from our episode that we did together a couple weeks ago, when she said that putting yourself first is selfless, not selfish. And she's like, a lot of clients she has thinks that it's selfish to put yourself first. And it's really not, because if you give, your cup is then empty and there's nothing to give to yourself. There's nothing to give to others. But if you take a minute and you recharge and you put yourself first, you're able to then be the best version of yourself to serve others, the best friend, the best mom, the best daughter, the best teacher, the best student, whatever it may be, coworker, employee. Like, all of those things require you to pour into yourself first so that you can then pour into others, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. That is another Yolanda quote. And yeah, so those are kind of my final thoughts. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I hope I did 86ing people pleasing justice. And if you have any other thoughts, or if you have tips or tricks that you use to kind of combat your people-pleasing tendencies, please comment them below. Let us know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments on any of the platforms that we post on. Speaking of platforms, follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Also subscribe on YouTube. How have we been liking the video versions on Spotify? Is anybody watching? What do we think? I know when it first gets posted, it's like pretty horrible quality because it's still like uploading. Oh my gosh, I forgot to say happy Halloween. This episode comes out on Halloween, hence why I'm wearing my spooky skeleton sweater again. Happy Halloween, everyone. But yeah, when this episode comes out, hopefully it's all good quality. Let me know what you think of the video on Spotify. I don't know if anyone has noticed or if it like makes a difference for anyone's viewing experience, but I would love to hear. All right, I'd love to know. But yeah, that's it. If no one has told you recently, I love you, I'm proud of you, and you're kicking life's butt. Keep up the excellent work. Yeah, truly. Yeah, thanks guys. See you next week. Bye.